Tēnā rawara tātou, tēnā hoki tātou, kua hoki ake mai rā tātou mātou ki roto ki Hawaikirangi, ki roto ki ngā kōrero, e pātu ana nei i te pēne i atahu. Nā i te āta whakarite atu mātou ki tētahi rua o ētahi o te pauturu ki pau āwhina kia hara mai roto i tēnei rā, engari kare anō i tino whai wāhi ai, ka mutu i te āhua i tino whai wāhi ai, engari ka mutu i roto i te wā i mua tonu i te tino whakaiti ai o tērā o ngā haramaitanga o rāiwa, karekau e tāe atu ana. Hoi anō he wāno, tēnā rā tātou kia tauwhanga atu ai, ki tērā wā. Ana, mātaua wāno tātou, mātau atu ai, haiwhea, rāiwa hara mai ai ki te kōrero ki a tātou mai mātau. Ki te kōrero atu, i o rāiwa, whēako, ki roto ki tēnei puoro ki ngi mangu nei. Tēnei puoro nei. Tino taonga nei nā ia nei ki roto ki a tātou mātou, kai te motu. Kai te whāinga e te nui e te roa, e ngā tāngata i ngā iwi katoa i roto i ngā hapori. Kuina nā no mātou i roto Tūtahu Trust Tahu Investments Limited, kua hia ke roa no i nā ia nei. E whakatū ana i te pēne, ana i rā pēne ka whakatū atu anō ai ki roto ki te puora nei, te puoro ki ngi mangu. No reira nau mai haere tātou mātou i roto i tēnei o ngā hōtaka i a Hawaikirangi i whakatū atu nei, e pātu nei i te whakahaere me te haerenga o tēnei o ngā pēne i a tahu. I roto i te haere o te pēne nei, ki roto ki te ao puoro, whakatuari atu ai i tēnei taonga nei, o ngā puoro o roto i a tātou, i roto i nei rā, te puoro ki ngi mangu. Nau mai haere tātou, tēnā tātou, kua hoki ake mai, tēnā rā tātou, kua hara mai i roto ko ia tēnei te wātua tahi ki a koutou. Tēnā rā hoki tātou e hara mai ana mai i tērā tau, mai i te whanatu o te whanakehia o tēnei o tātou hōtaka. Kaua e ware atu, he hōtaka anō no Tūtahu Trust Tahu Investments Limited, ko ia te pū, te amoni tautoko i tēnei o ngā hōtaka. Ai, ko te kai wai kōrero tērā. Kāre i te whakahoki mai, e whakaaro atu ana e mātou kia whakahoki mai ki roto ki tēnei o ngā marama, tēnei te rā o te pare ārau, te whā o ngā rā o te marama rua, ne? Nā, ki roto ki tēnei marama, e whakaaro atu ana mātou ki te whakahoki mai i a te kai wai kōrero. I tangohi atu, i runga i te, e nui anō ngā take i tangohi atu ai. Hoi anō ko tētahi mea, ngā teina mātā muri i roto i a tātou ki te rohe nei, ki ngā rohe ki a tahu māka ka nui matua. Kai i te tino āroha tonu, kari te tino whai whakaaro ki te nunui me te nunui ke o i nei tūāhuatanga o roto i te reo kia tahu māka ka nui matua e pāho haere nei. Kare anō rātau kia tino whai i te aroha tonu ki i nei taonga nei. Ana, e takatakahi haere tiana nei e rātau te taonga reo nei me ngā āhuatanga katoa o te hapu nui tonu re tārewa. Ia tahu mā ka nui matua. Ko te mate kē pea, tō rātau turuki, tō rātau whaitonu kia oki tonu e rātau te taha ki te Pākehā. Tētahi mea no kia tino oki tonu e rātau te taha ki te karauna. Ne? Nā reira, o rātau na he, o rātau na ngoikore e putana mai I roto I e nā mea. I roto I e nā mea o rātau. Hui anō kāre rātau I te tino pekātu kāre parorike I e rātu āhuatanga kai te whaitoni I ara pō. Koe nā te mate o mātau te ina mātā muri o roto I ngā hapu uretā rewa I ngā rohe kia mātau tahi ko kahungunu mātau tahi ko rangitāne. Kahungunu he uri noiho. He uri no roto I a waitaha rangi. Kia tuki tēnei o ngā hōtaka Hawaikirangi. Kai te whakaaro atu mātau ki te whakawhaiti mai I te waiata takoto hiatura ki te kupu me te reo o roto waitaha rangi. Koia tērā te uretā rewa hapu I puta mai ai a kahungunu. Nā, no te mea kahungunu he tua whānōna ki tōna whānau. Karakau ōna uretā rewa hapu. Kai te pai? Karakau ōna uretā rewa ariki. No te mea he tua whā. Ko ngā mea whakapakanga, ko ia rātau noa o rātau o ngā ariki ka puta iho mai rā I roto I te uretā rewatanga. E whakaetia mai anō ai e o rātau na ariki. Kai te pai? Nā, I roto I te rātu āhua, e tahe ana te ki, a kahungunu he uri noiho, ana no waitaha rangi, ana kare anō kia tino atu ai, a kahungunu ki roto ki te rā mea I roto I tēnei wā tonu nei. Pai te hia tonu e rātau te reo nei, o waitaha rangi, karakau rātau te tino hia kia huri atu rātau I tēnei mea pōhewa nei, mana pōhewa nei o ngā kōrero e whai atu ana nei e rātau kia uru atu rātau ki raro I a waitaha rangi, kia tino whai mana I rātau, kia whakawhiwhia ki tēnei o ngā taonga, tēnei o ngā reo nei, reo tawhito hoki, ki tēnei o ngā rohe wenua, o Wairarapa ki Tararua, tēnei o ngā tīkare nei. Karakau hoki rātau I te āta whakarongo atu ki a rātau anō. E pōhehe ke no rātau, o rātau whakaaro Pākehā, o rātau tikanga Pākehā, e tino tahu ana ki ngā āhuatanga tūturu e kōrero hia kene. Ana e rātu āhuatanga tonu, e tino tahu ana tonu, ki te whakawhai mai e rātau, mā rātau, I ni taonga nei, e kia nei te reo, e kia nei te uretā rewatanga. Karakau hoki rātau e whai atu ana I te mana, karakau hoki rātau e whai atu ana I te whakaaro, te kaha o te whakaaro, kairoto ke I te kaha, I te hao Pākehā tūturu, no roto mai anō I puta mai ai te nuinga wōna, I te taha tonu ki te karauna. E nui anō no I rā kōrera. Engari, āhua tau maha hoki. Hui anō, e tātau maha. Kia inoi rā tātau. Te Iawe atua, ko hoki mai anō rā mātau I roto Hawaikirangi ki roto ki tēnei wā tonu nei. Koa, o mātau hoa, ia Coral, ia Matt, kāre tai kia hara mai I roto I tēnei wā. Ko te pai tonu e haere tonu ana ngā titiro ki ngā mea I roto I te taha ki te puoro ki ingi mangu a ngā wahine. Te taha ki te wahine I roto I tēnei o ngā tū āhuatanga o te whakatangitangi puoro ki ingi mangu. ko ia tā mātau i tai ake mai ai i roto i tēnei wā tonu nei. Nā reira, ko ia tonu tērā te mea hai whai atu ki roto ki tēnei rā tonu. E whakamoe miti atu ana i a koe, ko koe i anō tēnei e whakarahirahi ana nei a mātau i ngā wā katoa. Koina anō rā mātau ka whai wā ahi ai. Ki roto ki te au ki tōho wairua, kia tae pai mai. Ngā āhuatanga katoa ki o mātau whānau, putanua, kai te tino tau, kai te tino noho atu ki roto ki te rongo mārire. Me tō kaha noho tonu ki a rātau, me mātau. Nō reira, kai te whakamoe miti atu ki a koe ki roto ki tēnei wā, me te pēne i a tahu, e tino tau awhi atu ana e koe, e tino tau mana ki atu ana, e tino tau tia ki atu ana e ko koe. Tō tātou mātau pēne i a tahu, i roto i e nei rā, i roto i ngā hararei, i ngā rā whakatā, tai atu anō rā hoki, ki ngā wā mai anō i te tī matatanga, mehe mea kāre mātau i tino whai atu ai, pēr ki roto ki te hōtaka, ki te whai atu i o rātau kōrero, i roto i te wā i tīmata ria atu ai. Tēnā kua kore pēr e tino kahake ake mātau ki roto ki te wā tonu nei, ne? Whakamoe miti, e te rungarawa, te Iawe atua, e te atua matua kaharawa, e te ingoa te iehua. Āmene. Koe ana, kareu te he mene i roto i nei rā, no te mea kareu te i te kawe haere i aku taonga puoro i roto i nei wā. Hoi anō kai te pai, ana e nui atu ana no ngā mea atu ana i roto i te tarati, i roto i ngā rā, i roto i te rūnanga nui anō, i roto anō i te kaporei ana matua. E nui anō no ngā mahi, no ngā mea hai whai, ngā whainga anō i roto i iara, i ngā pō tonu, te nuinga o ngā pō anō, kai te haere tonu i nei mea. E no reira tātou, nau mai haere, te taha ki te wahine, e haere tonu ana tēnā mea. E haere tonu ana tēnā mea i runga i te whakaaro nui, ko tō tātou mātau anō taha ki a tātou mātau, i roto i ngā tikanga ki a tātou mātau. E harai te mea tonu nei, kia tino whai tonu ai i tērā tū huatanga, ki roto ki, i roto i te taha ki te tāne wairua ki atu nei. Wairua ki atu nei, tērā tū hua. Hoi anō, ki roto ki ngā tū huatanga katoa te wahine, e tino hohonu ana ki tērā taha. Ana e whāenga atu ana, e tāe atu ana nohoki ki roto ki a rātau, iaua mea katoa ki te taha ki te wahine, kai roto ki a rātau. Tēnei e whai mai nei, tēnei o ngā wahine kai te ao, kai te kaha nei te whakatangitangi pōro ki ingi mangu nei. Nā, ko ia anō tētahi o te tino o te ao i roto i tēnei wā, ko Desiree tōna ingoa. Anā, e haere ake nei ki a tātou i roto i tēnei wā tonu nei e tātou mā. E haere ake nei i roto i te taihua, ko Desiree kai muri ke ake nei. Tēnei anō tētahi, ne? Just introducing one of our wahine toa, one of our kuini, because we are figuring some of their music as well at the moment. After linking in with Matt and Coral, what we've found is that they're doing pretty well. They're two of our kaiawhina, they're two of our helpers in with the group, in with Tahu, in with the band, and they are doing really well with us. And I wanted to feature them on the show a bit before we actually perform on the 4th, and have them talk about their experiences. No doubt they've got a lot to share, because they're definitely showing a lot of signs that they've learnt a lot. They haven't actually played a lot of reggae in their musical careers. They've got musical careers that go back a long way, and they'll probably say not that far back, but and that'll be okay with me. But we oftentimes we want to talk to some of those who are new to the music as well, and look at their learning experiences, because that is maybe a lot of where a lot of the breakdown has come within the focus on the teaching of reggae music. It hasn't been that great, and a lot of people who haven't really understood the music properly have perhaps taught theory more than actual reggae, and so it's trapped the music in our country into a sort of it's trapped it into a sort of a very narrow chasm, if you like, of understanding, where the actual music itself is not coming through as it really is. It's far more expansive, far more extensive, far deeper. In the knowledge of the music needs to go far deeper than it does currently, and that's in theory circles as well. And also, a lot of the people teaching reggae music are not actually that experienced. So there you go. And that's another reason why I wanted to talk to Coral and Matt. And they will come in at some time, but they just couldn't make it today. So let's focus back on the wahine side of the music. But first, let's get a load of this waiata coming up. A waiata by, I forget the lady who sings this waiata, but let's focus on her right now and have a listen to this waiata of hers, one of my favourites, E haere ake ni ki a tātou, Kahuri.
I can still remember when it was just me and you. Suddenly, it's on you and your crew. Forget everything about your boo. I wish you woulda treat me like your black. I woulda love it if you keep me from top. I wish you woulda treat me like your yacht. Keep me wet while the waves in my rock. Why you can't stay from me like the corner and keep your lips from me like your marijuana? I woulda love it if you treat me like the club. Stay up in on me whole night, just a bump and grind and rock. You don't understand what your woman needs from her man. While you're there on the street all the time, just bear this in mind, wow. These streets don't love you like I do. You need to know that you wanna keep your woman loving you. Then you need to show that the love we have, when it takes so much effort to build, you about to blow that. But just like a played out jersey, you about to get thrown back. I wish you woulda treat me like a ounce. Me know you're not like that when you bounce. You shoulda the woman have boots like your Timbs. Need to act older than the size of your rims. I wish you woulda stay up on me like your phone man, and never leave the house without me like your pro man. Why I wish you woulda treat me like your whips. Your girls are perfect 10, but your pins them are only a 5 and a 6. You don't understand what your woman needs from her man. Why you dip on the street all the time? Just bear this in mind. These streets don't love you like I do. like a played out jersey. You about to get through back. Now the feds have them case and they gavel a pound. Me look for your familiar face, me no see none around. When you call me collect, give me errands to do. Me no see no hot girl, me no see none of your crew. Government sees everything, that cheese everything. And another ball I don't take over this spot. I run trees, everything, that keys everything. And 10 cars a month is all you got saying. Now you understand what I was trying to say to my man. Why you didn't dip on the grind? You should have feared this in my life. See the streets, them not give a damn. Bang little bang, I just the place where you pedal pan. I fall in love with the corner. You can't see me never want ya. These streets don't love you. You know these streets don't love you. You know these streets can't hold you. Don't love you. You know these streets don't love you like I do. These streets don't love you. You know these streets don't love you like I do. These streets don't love you. You know these streets don't love you like I do. You know these streets don't love you like I do. These streets don't love you like I do.
Ka pai rā, tino pai tērā ngā waiata. Nō ka tīmata atu rā, ka maumahara atu ahau ki tērā ngā wahine ko Tanya Stevens tērā. The streets, tērā wana waiata, streets. Tino waiata ne. Ai, te taha ki te wahine tā mā. Kia tino kore ai e tātou tērā taha ki te puoro e ware atu. Hai te mea ko tō te tāne te tangi. Harai te mea ko tō te tāne kaue e tau tonu ana, waia tonu atu ana katoa ki nei tū āhuatanga. Kaua ki roto ki te puoro ki ingi mangu, ne? Kaua rahu ki tātou e ware ki nei mea. Ākua pē whea rahu ki tātou whakaaro atu ai, mahara atu ai ki nei tū āhuatanga. E kore kau, e tāia, te whakarite i tērā taha. I āia, nō hona nei te taha, ne? No na nei te taha. Just in these past couple of weeks, I've been taking note of a lot of sharing of kōrero on Facebook, and some of our kasis, they're getting right into the realm of io. And te ao kia io te matua te kore, io take, you know, tino tapu, that realm, tino tapu. And I know for a fact our ancestors themselves never used to use the realm of io in the pā. They used to take it right away and either used to use it within the beach. You know, there were secluded places in the takutai moana. Just talking wairua there, and wairua is a big part of the music too. And some of our whanaunga have been mentioning that you know, there's a lot of the taha wahine. According to Tao Kia Io, I roto I te taha ki te tāne. And that's fine, but I tao wairua hoki tērā, I tao wairua tonu hoki tērā. And in the makeup, kai roto ke ngā whatu mana wā, te whatu ngā kauera ahuatanga katoa, ana kai roto I tērā atuatanga ngā hohonutanga o I rā mea. And there's a lot more to it too, but yeah, I've been enjoying all of that kōrero too, because it's been a long time since I heard kōrero like that. And a long time since actually kōrero around io itself is very, very hard to come by. So it's quite how can I put it? It's quite a privilege really, to hear kōrero like that, kōrero of the Tao Kia Io, Matua Kore. And they're getting right into it. Some of our hapu are really going deep into realms like that. The atuatuatanga are really coming into play. And I guess this helps I know a lot of the reggae music around the Tūhoe areas, Awa areas is quite good. Yeah, there's quite good reggae coming from there. And it's of a style of their own. And a lot of what you can put that down to is the wairuatanga. And all very good for people who are right into that. We're not into that in Tahumaka Nui Matua. We decided that was a realm that we don't want to touch too often, or touch pretty much not at all, because of, you know, everything you get into in our old ways. You've got to be careful, because they always follow on. And as soon as you follow on from the realm of Io, I mean, unless they cut off somewhere, I don't know. But if they're going to go the whole hog, what they have to do is take the repugnant as well along with it. And we're, I'm afraid, Tahumaka Nui Matua doesn't practice the repugnant side of our culture anymore. That's why we went that way. But it's interesting, a lot of that sort of kōrero. I just thought I'd share that. A lot of that sort of kōrero has been coming out in amongst some of our kazi bros and kazi sisters, sharing about the realm of Io, Tao Kia Io. And Io is, just for those of you listening that don't know, Io is our supreme God. So we had lots of, gods, and we still have lots of them. And they were all deities and atuatua within different realms. And Io was the uppermost. See, so... and I guess it makes sense for a lot of our people, but for those who wish to get into that, all fine with us. But we figure that we have learnt our lessons from the past in Tahumaka Nui Matua, and we don't wish to return back to that. And a lot of the problem with our past in terms of tikanga, and we've got waiata about that. Some of our waiata in Tahu are about some of those struggles of our ancestors. They had struggles too. And they were in a world that, don't forget, they were a world that was totally hapu. It was an ao hapu. There wasn't any other iwi or uri or hapu around but ours. So it was a world that could only but work. We had a law system that could only but work within its structure. So everything had its place. But things, it wasn't a perfect world. So let's not get carried away about the fact that although we had a very, very powerful, very, very strong, very, very well put together world, it was a world that was also repugnant. And so we have to think about that if we, and for us in Tahumaka Nui Matua, and even for Tahu, the band, we sing against those sorts of things, because we don't want to disgrace ourselves on the world stage. We don't want to disgrace ourselves as a people. We don't want to, we are quite embarrassed and ashamed at all these things and they were quite attractive to people like the crown, the crown. When they saw things like that going on in the world, hence, for want of a better word, I guess they became so prejudiced as a result of, seeing those sorts of repugnant practices and knowing about them, that they ended up real racist against us. And, having learnt much about a lot of those things growing up and knowing those sorts of things, the repugnant practices of old, of our tūpuna, of our ancestors, of our hapu. Look, it's no wonder. It's no wonder. So a return to that is not for us. We don't want to welcome other entities to come and try and take us out as a result of those repugnant practices. And a lot of those practices were treason, treason type practices. There was a lot of different practices that where people's whole bodies and spiritual being and even the soul could be taken control of and destroyed. All those sorts of things. People could be made to, your mental side of you, tō whakaaro, hinengaro, all those sorts of things. The mental ability of the person could be taken control of. And actually those people made to, they could be like handicapped. We talk about people having strokes, having fits, and all those sorts of things due to their incapabilities mentally of functioning in a way that they wouldn't. Well, some of the repugnant practices of our old tūpuna under the realms of io would make people go like that. Yeah. So sometimes, some of the punishments of old, there were karakia that actually made people go like that. No, they're not for us in Tahumākaka Nui Matua. But I thought I'd mention that because we're talking taha ki te wahine. And in the realm of io, it was believed that men also possessed a lot of the power of the women and strength and capabilities of the women. But I wanted to chime in there today and say, well, wairu atu, because you can't replace the actual women. Te taha ki te wahine, when we talk taha ki te wahine, we talk the actual woman themselves, and no one can own that space like women can. And even in the times of our ancestors, women owned their space. Men owned their space. Tina owned their space. Tuakana owned their space. It was like that. Slaves, who were the only real lower class in society, or anyone imprisoned, they were just like slaves. They were the only lower class in our society. So, there you go. There you go. So, just thought I'd mention that. But while we're talking te taha ki te wahine I roto I te pōro ki ngi mangu, e tātou mā, the womanly side of reggae is so much more needed than we probably underrate that. We probably think, culturally we can survive that, but that only happened for men in among our tūpuna if women were definitely unavailable. And there were times they weren't available, and so women couldn't do their functions, so men could play those functions, but those were the only times. See, so that that's one example that proves to you that even in our society, in our culture, women owned their space. Men couldn't really take it over. Although men held, power of the womanly space, men could not own the womanly space. And so I just thought I'd make that clear on here. But yeah, unbelievable, all that sort of stuff. That's going really deep. Sorry about that. That's going really deep into wairua. But the wairua that we are carrying on here is the wairua of the Christ. And that's where tahu comes in. Tahu is into the wairua of the Christ and sharing our taonga te puoro ki ngi mangu I roto I tērā wairua. Wairua pai, wairua kaha, wairua whakaora, wairua urake. Ana kaira to tonu hoki I tērā ngā wairua. He oranga kia tātou mātou katoa. So, yeah, that's a good wairua to carry. And like any taha ki te wairua in puoro ki ngi mangu in reggae, it's highly prioritized and top of the list, top of the bucket list. Te taha ki te wairua. And so, let's get on with these wahine. Tanya Stevens, we've got another waiata by Tanya Stevens later, but, no, actually, we've got two by this next one. And this is her first one I'm going to share with you right now. This is Desiree. Desiree singing one of her, it's a big hit around the world, apparently, this one too. Desiree and Poverty e tātou mā. Kai te ono mai I te whā o ngā haora, I roto I tēnei o ngā rā, te whā o te maramarua. Rua mano, rua ngahuru mātahi. Kua tino tīmata, ne? Kua tino tīmata. Ana kai te whakarongo atu e ahau ngā kōrero I ngā whakahaere tanga. Te haere o te perimia, te haere o Wairānei, te kāwana tianara a Wairānei ki Waitangi. E rā ahuatanga katoa e haere atu ana, kai te haere ke ana ua mea, me tō tātou ki te atu, kai te tino haere tēnei tau, kai te tino haere anō ngā mea katoa a tahu kai te tino kaha te haere, e rua ngā pēne I roto I a tahu I nāiana, tētahi he kai āwhina, tētahi, ana, ko te tino pēne I a tahu, hoi, ko tahu katoa, ngā mea katoa no kai roto. No reirara e tātou, kai te tino kua hau, ki roto ki tēnei wā, ki te ki atu, ta whakarongo mai, ta titiro mai tātou e mātakitaki ana mai I a whakaata Wairarapa. Ko Desiree tēnei me Poverty e haere ake ni ki a tātou kahuri.
Interest everything left and right. We can't take the bill, I mean, we eyesight. Just yesterday we done pay the light. I know them send another one out there tonight. That's no right in just sight. And then them raise certain price for spite. Just so the black youth them can enjoy. So in return all them want do is fight. Me just come to shine certain lights. Poverty just a blow them mind. Poverty a blow the youth them mind. So in return all them want do is crime. Poverty a blow the people mind. Me tell you no. Poverty just a blow them mind. Poverty a blow the youth them mind. So in return all them want do is crime. Poverty a blow the people mind. One more time. Poverty just a blow them mind. Poverty a blow the youth them mind. So in return all them want do is crime. Poverty a blow the people mind.
Desiree me tana waiata poverty e tātou mā kai te ngahuru mātahi meniti mai i te whā. E tātou mā, tino waiata tira ne, tino waiata tira. Ana kare tino roa ka hoki atia no tātou kia Desiree. Ki aia ki te whakarongo atu ki tētahi o ana waiata i te kōpae waiata tini, waiata i te rawana kōpae waiata Gracious Mama Africa. Gracious Mama Africa. Aira. Yeah, so interesting, eh? Interesting, eh? All that sort of kōrero. But some of the reason why, yeah, this is why tahu mā kāka nui matua I roto I te rūnanga nui o tahu. From within te rūnanga nui o tahu, which is the governing council of tahu mā kāka nui matua, that is our Ariki's council. And the Council of the Tūākana, all of the Tūākana in there, right back to our Tūākana, the Moai Hapu, Moai Uretārewa Hapu, and Te Awa Uretārewa Hapu. Yeah, and so that's where we come from, Tahu mā kāka nui matua Uretārewa Hapu, with the next one after that. And look, we decided that because etama, you know what? We've just come through a couple of 100 years. We've just been slammed equally, you know. With colonization, it's just taken our people apart. You know, of 135 to 150 hapu and uri hapu amongst us, you know, probably only about 7 of the super tribal groups themselves. The Uretārewa super tribes we're talking about, only about 7 are really, you know, functional today. You know, that's pretty sad to see. And a lot of it was because of our repugnant practices of old. You know, our new people that came into the land, they didn't much like that sort of thing. And I dare say it's all around the world. You know, repugnant practices are not acceptable anywhere in the world. So for us to think, well, because it's part of our, well, in tahu mā kāka nui matua, we agree, yeah, it's part of our culture, but no, we don't have to continue it on, especially if it's repugnant, you know, or if it's not going to do our tamariki or our mokopuna any good. And we've got waiata about that in tahu. Those are some of the serious waiata we're going to bring to you in the, in the years to come. And those years are not too far away into the not so distant future. And so, yeah, a lot of those things, you know, for us to go back into those sorts of practices for tahu mā kāka nui matua, we don't think there's any need. And we think we would be setting up our tamariki and our mokopuna for destruction in future. For a repeat of the same thing, well, similar, or the same thing, and then they'd have to relearn the lessons that we've had to learn. and it just seems, but that's a big take, that's a big take, that's a big matter to discuss. So I'm not going to try and discuss it on air today, but what I'm going to do is look at one of the aspects of that, and one of the aspects that come with that when you go fully into practices like that, what you're doing is living an entirely different structure and law system that only suited us, whereas today we live among a whole huge number of races today, and so we can't be like going into practices like that, and it's happening now. It's happening now. You've got karakia being thrown at people willy-nilly, because people are not happy with this, people are not happy with that, and that's how the law system was. It's just chaotic. It's crazy. Another thing with those sorts of things is people, someone can die. Someone can die in the process. We're not talking about practices where you just play around. I mean, a lot of what we do today is just play around. That's another aspect I want to talk about, because a lot of what we do today is just play around. The ways of old don't suit it. The ways of old do not suit. And so these are some of the things, these are some of the struggles of Tahumā Nui Matua in this day and age. Tahumā Nui Matua wants to weigh out about some of those things as well. So it's not just about the Crown, but and about the Pākehā. Sometimes it might sound like I'm beating down on Pākehā. That's not true. What I'm saying is that it's not the perfect place, the world of the Pākehā, for us to delve into, to find the sustenance that we need. The sustenance that we need is actually for our lives, to re-enrich our lives with our cultures back in Te Ao Tūturu. But then once we're back in Te Ao Tūturu, we have to be careful we don't go too far and we don't go too deep into practices that, obviously our tūpuna along the way, a lot of our tūpuna decided that they wouldn't practice those anymore. We were highly restrained by the Crown. We were highly restrained, our tūpuna, by the Crown, and made not to practice a lot of those things anymore. And what we think in Tahumā Nui Matua is we don't blame them. We don't blame them. I mean, they probably witnessed people dying, just falling over and dying everywhere, because of some of these practices. They didn't just notice the physical repugnance, the beheading of people in battle, and gutting of people's insides, and all those sorts of eerie, terrible things, and people eating people, all those sorts of practices. Let's say we're not ashamed of our of our heritage. Nonetheless, we're not embarrassed of that's where we're from. If that's where we're from, then fine. But what we're embarrassed about, and what we're ashamed of, is that if we're going to have some of our people carry all that sort of stuff on, then we're not living in the same day. That's what we think. That's what we think. And are we going to take all those practices to places like Mars? When we start to, they're talking 2050, the beginning of peopling of Mars, settlement on Mars, and things like that. I would be highly against taking any, tikanga that have, we've been our own worst enemy, let's put it that way, at times. This is not just about the crown. Let's not beat down on the crown and then go back to our old ways, This is something that I want to bring up, because these are some of the waiata of tahu. We waiata about these sorts of things. They're serious things. They're serious issues. But some of our people have gone into those realms, and you can't stop them once they do. And I wouldn't try to, because they obviously believe they have a way of continually practicing those things in the modern day. And that's fine. What we say is go tūturu. What we don't say is go repugnant as well. Yeah. Tūturu isn't necessarily repugnant, because in the tūturu times, what they were always looking for is ways of controlling, ways of managing, ways of getting the law system to work in a way that it was manageable and able to produce, for those who were really harahara and kikino, that there was punishment enough for them to be able to pay for their crimes. And they paid dearly, and they suffered, and in wars people suffered dearly. Huge numbers were lost at our own hands, because sometimes war was the last resort. And boom, that's where they went to. They went to war, and lots of people got taken in those wars. Do we want to continue to practice those sorts of things anymore, where masses get taken? I mean, we talk about other people committing genocide on others. I think you're on a pathway to that sort of thing when you're getting back into practices like that. We don't think it's workable. We don't think it's manageable. And especially in this day and age, when you look right across the world, and you'd hardly find anybody repugnant in the world today. If we're going to start to be looked at as repugnant people from right across the world, we're in big trouble. We're in big trouble, yeah. And those are some of the things that Tahu, the band, are worried about. Tahu Mākāka Nui Matsua. Because people, believe it or not, people respect us. Yeah, there's a lot of people that respect us for the way we do things. But there's also those that don't. We get the odd kaumātua, or the odd rangatira, they'll say, oh wow, that's not very tūturu, and they'll say that to people like us, some of the most tūturu people in the country, some of the most traditional, I'm saying. And that's not right. That's not right to say that to me. That's not right to say that to me. Even in the days of old, they were always looking for better ways, and oraki. I'm talking oraki, a better way, a sustenance that we can be sustained by, something we can be sustained by, that our living quality, that our life quality can be sustained. Oraki, tira, oraki. That's oraki. And we love to look for that in tahu, because when you have oraki, you're lively, you're vibrant, and you feel alive, you have a good wairua around, and there's no, there's no bickering or anything like that, and all those sorts of troubles that we go through today, we don't have that in Tahu Mākāka Nui Matsua, because we have a very strong and powerful way of building on oraki. We don't have inferiority complexes. We don't have repugnance. Repugnance is not a practice in Tahu Mākāka Nui Matsua. We've let all that go. And in fact, we officially did that in 2005, because we weren't ready to until then. In 2005, we officially did that publicly. And we did that because we don't need those sorts of practices. That's what we think. And in fact, right throughout the whole of mai te rerenga wairua, ki roto ki Murihiku, from the top of the north to the bottom of the south, Tahu Mākāka Nui Matsua has outlawed all of that sort of practice, all of the repugnant practice of old, which comes with the realm of io. and also comes with the a lot of the old practices through some of the atuatuatanga. We get karakia that connect them with them. And that's our complex, a lot of the way, when we're talking wairua spirituality of our people, of hapu, and our ancestries and our culture, very, very complex, eh? It gets very, very complex. So, we've got to be very, very careful there. And just going on to another of our awesome wahine, and we're going to get to listen to another waiata, and this would be Janine Itama, Janine singing for us right now. And Janine, just before I forget, this waiata, particular waiata, features chronics. Sometimes we have waiata of the wahine and they're featuring some of the tāne, which is sometimes not introduced by me, but that's okay. That's okay. And that's heavy recorded, that's heavy recorded. But that's what we want to do in tahu. Sometimes we don't just want to share the love, but we want to share a side of us that's, hugely intellectual as well, and hugely and that mentally we want to share, and that we, there's a lot more to us than just being the sizzling hot darlings of tahu of tahu mā ka nui matua, and that we love reggae, and that's all, and we like to share the love and be ambassadors for the music, because our brothers and sisters of Africa and our whanaunga, dare I say, I need to say that, our whanaunga, let's put that right, they're our whanaunga, and they're direct whanaunga to tahu mā ka nui matua. They brought this music, this wonderful taonga for us, this wonderful treasure taonga for us to share and to be able to utilize. So why not go out there and promote and advocate that we say it's it's the root of all music. It is the genesis of all music. And that's because our African brothers and sisters say that, and they know that, and they play it like that. And I'm so grateful that we have this music, and I thank the Lord all the time for all these wonderful things about reggae music. E tātou mā. And right now we have Janine. Janine has become pretty big in the world of reggae music as well. E tātou mā, Janine, featuring Chronics. This is a hardcore remix of... it just says here, maybe it Steamers, a bubble. Let's see what it is. Let's see how it sounds. E tātou mā, e haere ni kia tātou, kai te ruangahuru mā iwa meniti mai I te whā. And, tēnei a Janine.
I can't stop the time. Original Chronics and Janine. Talking to the youths of today.
Hardcore, you cannot claim no victory till your heart pure and your mind. But them hardcore, when I say I alone can make them hard sure at this time. Hey, hardcore, you cannot claim no victory till your heart pure and your mind. But them hardcore, when I say I alone can make them hard sure at this time. At ease, this peace we're seeking. So all I try for disturb a distance, we're keeping you away.
hardcore. Put some positivity in your thoughts more. It's not about the accounts, them we offshore. Quit the plastic smiling and go laugh more. I'm telling you hardcore. Put some positivity in your thoughts more. Not about the accounts, them we offshore. Quit the plastic smiling and go laugh more.
Open up the Stargate, she really have to think. Is it just desire? What will it require? Do you have the strength to hold it if you let it reach the brink? Are you playing a game or do you know your role? Are you willing to wager your soul? Will you be a victim? Stranded at the barrier or bravely ascending to warrior? To goddess, to hardcore. As she acclaimed the victory cause her heart pure and our mind hardcore. Till I say I alone I make her heart sure. At this time hardcore. You cannot claim the victory till your heart pure and your mind both them hardcore. When I say I say I alone, I just say I say I alone. The problems which confront us today are unprecedented. They have no counterpart in human experience. Men search the pages of history for solutions, for precedents, but there are none. This, then, is the ultimate challenge. Where are we to look for our survival? For the answers to the questions which have never before been posed? We must look first to the Almighty, who raised man above the animals and endowed him with intelligence and reason. And we must look into ourselves, into the depths of our souls. We must become something we have never been, and for which our education and experience and environment have ill-prepared us. We must become bigger than we have been, more courageous, greater in spirit, larger in outlook. We must become members of a new race, overcoming petty prejudice, owing our ultimate allegiance not to nations, but to our fellow men within the human community.
Ahai rā hoki, ko tērā o ngā waiata ko hardcore. Nā chānai, tino waiata ne, tino pai ne, ātāhua rā hoki, te pōro ki ngi mangu o ngā kuini ne, ngā kuini, tērā o ngā kuini, o te pōro ki ngi mangu ko chānai. Yeah, but just quickly, e tātou mā, just quickly, getting back to the issue there of going back to the repugnant practices of old. Yeah, in Tahumākaka Nui Matua, we've found it somewhat challenging, but we are going to stick to our guns, and we are going to stay with what we have, because it's a practice of old too, to always look for better ways around things, better ways of managing things. And we've included within our law system, within Tahumākaka Nui Matua, ure tā rewa hapu, within our law system, that the repugnant practices are taken out, and we have far better, safer, healthier, for today's standards, practices in there. We're still devising a lot of that, but we already have a lot as well. So yeah, that's our world, we're going there. But yeah, we believe we've got practices that are far better and far more able to manage the situation for our people. We think we've got better practices than what our tipuna had. And let's not forget, those practices were frowned upon in the day, The day, we talk about Hobson's pledge, we talk about Hobson and Governor Grey and all them taking over this and taking over that. Well, think about why. They obviously formed a prejudice against the repugnant practices that we had. As a people, we just, our ancestors lived that unashamedly. And I'm not ashamed of that, because I wouldn't talk about it otherwise. I'm not ashamed of that. What I would be ashamed of is if we continue to practice that today, because, the whole world would be looking at us. Nā reira kia tūpato, kia tūpato, kia tūpato, kia mahara e tātou. Kai roto tonu anō tātou, kai te ao, whānui tonu. Ana, kai roto anō hoki tātou i te tau rua mano, rua ngahuru mātahi, kaua tātou i ngā tau tahi mano whārau. Kai te pai karakau. Kua huri te wā. And so we have to look for new measures. Nana, te ora ke kia mātau i roto i rā tūāhua. Replace them with far better, healthier, safer practices for our tamariki and for our mokopuna. And a lot of the karakia anyway, the karakia of old, are not safe e tātou mā, not for our tamariki, not for our mokopuna. Okay? As much as we have those who are, to me they're cocky. To me they're cocky. He māia tonu ke no rātau. Tino cocky rātau. And they think they can just throw these things around willy-nilly and, hurt someone's bum, or, they can do things like that. And I actually know of people who have had karakia thrown at them. They've had karakia thrown at them so much they've now got a sore bum. That's terrible. That's terrible. And just because these other people with the karakia have got an attitude problem. If we're going to foster things like that, he tamariki tērā. He tamariki te āhua. Those are childish ways of doing things. But that's what's being fostered among the karakia world in this day and age. And quite frankly, tahu mā kāka nui matua doesn't want a thing to do with it. Because it's so childish, because it's so repugnant, and because it basically molests a person. Sometimes they even use them on children, so it's the same as molesting a child. And I think that's disgraceful. I think that's disgraceful. Okay, they're using karakia, but it's the same thing. You're still touching that child with a wairua of a karakia that's come from your incantation. That's what a karakia is. The tūturu meaning of karakia is to incantate. Ki te tā karakia. Ka tā karakia koe, kai te aki e koe. Tētahi wairua kia tino, i roto i te atuatuatanga, kia tino mau atu ai, ki tērā tū āhua. Okay, i roto i te tangata. Yeah, and so we're not into those things today. We're into the good ones. Yeah. We're into the good ones, but a lot of those other ones we don't need. Okay, that's how we feel in this day and age. And one of our major reasons, I remember some of the hui of te runanga nui o tahu, and one of the major reasons that came out for that was that we've just been through 200 years of colonisation. We've been slammed to bits. A lot of our people have died. We've lost a lot of our people. They've died through all sorts of means. Okay, it wasn't just the wars, but it was all the sicknesses, diseases, everything. And the huge takeover of our people meant extreme damage to our people. So even though the Crown took us over and destroyed a lot of things about our culture, a lot of good things too in some cases, and they basically took control of us and changed, rearranged and reinterpreted and done all sorts of things. But the only reason they had those sorts of prejudices and racial tendencies against us was because of our repugnant ways. Our ancestors had really repugnant ways. And so, a lot of those sorts of things, I know they're a bit heavy to talk about, but I just wanted to mention those because we've been through 200 years of, you might as well say hell, because that's what it's been for Māori people. And a lot of our, like I said before, out of probably about 150 hapu, there's probably only about 7 in the country that are doing well, that are fit for purpose. Okay, 7 major hapu, something like that. That's sad. Our ancestors got destroyed, but I don't think we should set our children and our mokopuna up so that they can also be destroyed. I'm just a little bit weary of all that sort of thing that goes on, and that's why we don't practice those repugnant ways of old. Okay, in Tahumā ka nui matua. But let's go on to the second waiata of Desiree. We have another one of Desiree. Law for the outlaw. They got some cool waiata. Yeah, we've just been through 200 years. I would say, looking back at the extreme results, consequences of colonization, if you look at our repugnant side, it's about almost on a level pegging. But I would say our repugnant side is slightly worse, because it's so destructive, so much more destructive, and so much more is it justified within such a law system. And what we're saying, what we're saying by us taking up practices, some of us taking up all those practices again, is that we're saying our future generations are okay to have the extent of what that's going to be like as well. And that was the biggest reason for us changing our mind. We didn't want our future generations to go through the same sort of thing. You've had 200 years of colonization and drastic consequences, and then you're going to re-enter a law system that issues punishment that is almost, on a level pegging, but a lot worse. A lot worse. It has a lot worse consequences because you actually do die. You can die from the karakia. Those things. I think some of our people take some of these things far too lightly. They shouldn't be taken lightly at all. Okay? Now here's Desiree, law for the outlaw. E tātou mā, just to finish that side off. I wanted to share some of that because we've got waiata and tahu on some of those issues. And they're big issues, and they shouldn't be taken lightly. And I don't think people should just jump into those practices, especially people that have never had anything like that in their lives before, or have never known anything like that in their lives before. And these are people that haven't even got the leo. For Pete's sake, if you haven't got the leo, then you're far from fully understanding anything really about these taonga, bar a few English translations of things. You can't live on translations. You can't survive in our culture on translations and English ability to sometimes interpret. Sometimes I say, because there's a lot of our reo that isn't comprehensible to people outside of those who use them as our reo as a means of main medium of communication. Nā re kia tūpato, e tātauma, kia tūpato, that's all I say. And Tahumaka Kanui Matsua says that because, yeah, that's what we're taking a real precautionary approach. We haven't destroyed all those things, but we know for a fact that there's no need for us to pull out those practices and utilize them again, because our people don't need them. We've just been through 200 years of suffering, long suffering. And what we're saying is we're fine to have a law system that'll give us another, not just 200 years, but the rest of our, till eternity of the same thing. What's the use of settling claims? What's the use of settling grievances if we're going to go into practices like that? What sort of future our tamariki and mokopuna going to have? Are they going to go through again the same learning, having to learn the same lessons? We'd rather learn our lessons, take the learnings and move on and look for better, because that's what our tūpuna did, and that's how they came up with that law system. That's how they started to utilise that law system. Our culture wasn't altogether like that all the time. It developed over time. And those sorts of practices, repugnant practices, came in because they were the best way of getting to the psyche of our ancestors. Not our psyche today, of our ancestors. They believed it was the best way of stopping them. But it wasn't perfect. See? So even though we had long times, centuries of peace and harmony and stability, although we had that throughout this massive, I call it a massive law system, but it needs a huge upgrade to us. Te taumaka kanui matsua, we need to take out the repugnance, not leave it in there, because we've got better ways of doing things today, and utilise the rest of the law system, which we can make it work brilliantly for our people today, and for everybody today who believes they can live by our law system. Okay, we don't need to return back to the repugnant practices. No reira rai tātou, Desiree, me tērā sio ngā waiata, law for the outlaw. E haere ake nei ki a tātou, kai tēnei wā, te wā o ngā miniti whakamutunga ki te hōtaka ki Hawaikirangi, ki roto ki tēnei rā, ki te whā o ngā rā, te pare ārau, te whā o ngā rā, o te marama rua mano, rua ngahuru mātahi, kai te ngahuru mātahi meniti ki te rima e tātou mā. E haere ake nei tēnei waiata ki a tātou, hoi anō, kia inu atu nā tātou, ne? Te ia we atua, tukuna mai ana anō e ko koe, o whakaaro nui kia mātau, e ki atu ana koe, ko ia tēnei te wā, kia kōrero i hoai, whiriwhiri i hoai, i nei tū āhua ki roto ki a mātau. Tēnei meki o ngā hapu, ngā uri o roto i te ao hapu. Kua mō rehu mai nei ki roto ki tēnei ao, i roto tonu anō i a koe. I roto tonu anō i te karaiti. I roto tonu anō i te wairua pai. Kua pēwhea ngā āhuatanga ki ngā iwi nei, tai atu anō hoki ki te kamupene nā i tā te krauna. I patu haere anō i o mātau tūpuna. I patu haere anō i o mātau tikanga me o tātou i te taha tērā. Ki te taha e whakakikino atu nei, te taha ki te kikino te tangata. I roto i tēnei mea te patuhara, te patu tangata, te whakatitina tangata, te whakatitina, e rā āhua tanga katoa. Kia kōrero atu ai i roto i tēnei rā. Kua te taumaha, kia kōrero atu ai i roto anō i te kaupapa, o te taha ki te wahine. E tino taha taumaha anō. Engari, meki, Pai atu mea wahine kai roto nei e tāia e tērā taha ki te kōrero. Hua no, e tino tau atu ana te wahine ki roto ki te taha ki te tangi. Ki roto ki te taha ki te keke. Ki roto ki te kaha ki te tangi auraki. Te tangi meme, te tangi mumu anō, kai roto pēa i te taha ki te tāne tonu. Hoi anō, tērā atu kai te taha ki te wahine, kai te wahine tonu. Kai te wahine tonu hoki. Kai te wahine tonu hoki. No reira rā, kai te whakamue miti tēnei o mātau, ia koe i roto i tēnei wā, te rungara wai. Kia whakamue miti tia koe kātika. Kia whakanui a koe kātika. Kia whakamana ia koe kātika. Ko koe i anō e ārahi atu ana i ngā kōrero, i ngā ihuatanga. I te whai atu o tō tātou me mātou pēnene i a tahu. Kia hari atu ōna kōrero, ōna waiata, ōna kaha, ōna tautō hito, ki te whakatangitangi atu i tēnei taonga nei, te pōro ki ingi mangu. I tai hona anō nei, i roto tonu anō, i tō hou a rahi. Kia mātai, e no reira whakawhetai, whakamue miti, whakanui. Te ingoa te iehua. Āmene. And just one more thing, e tātou mā, yes, we must remember that we have, everything to gain by ensuring that the tangi of our pōro ki ingi mangu and the keke or the rebelliousness and what we sing about. And te reo huātau, wahine are especially good for reo huātau, or, harmonies and harmony structures and things like that. And bringing out the depth of grievance. Wailing. Wahine do that naturally. Wahine do that naturally. And no one can do the wahine side like the wahine. Let me finish on that note. And, Desiree. Lo whiri outlaw. E hairake ne ki a tātou. Kia ki te rā no tātou kuau. Ia tātou anō kai a te rā wiki. Lo whiri outlaw e hairake ne. Kahuri.
Because of you, there's a widow, lonely brethren, and a fatherless child. You'll reap what you sow, to hell you'll go, be tormented, that's right. Cause every dog have them day, and you can't have no say, wickedness don't pay. This is a law for the outlaw, 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 a law for the outlaw. You seek revenge from Laden, killing everyone else except for